Hello and welcome to Political Brew. I'm Phil Hirschkorn. The topics on today's show: the competitive race for the U.S. House in the 2nd Congressional District. We'll check in on our very own Democratic debate. The Maine governor's race, how the 7 Republicans and 5 Democrats are campaigning, and the independent who aims to spoil their party. The U.S. Senate race, Susan Collins versus Graham Platner, and the Iran war. My guests are Betsy, a Democrat, longtime people's lobbyist in Augusta, and a former candidate herself for Senate and governor, and Joe Bruno, a Republican, longtime state legislator and former House Minority Leader. Thank you both for being here.
It's good to be here.
Don Kerrigan and I were pleased this week to moderate a debate among the 4 Democrats competing to be the party's nominee in the 2nd Congressional District seat being vacated by Congressman Jared Golden. We asked questions and listened for an hour to State Senator Joe Baldacci, State Auditor Matt Dunlap, social worker Paige Loud, and former Congressional Chief of Staff Jordan Wood on a range of issues. Here are some highlights reported by our colleague Christian Harza.
Former congressional staffer Jordan Wood and state auditor Matt Dunlap touted their independence.
I don't take money from corporate PACs or lobbyists.
I kind of reject a lot of the labels about progressive, conservative, moderate.
State Senator Joe Baldacci stood by his record.
I'm the only candidate in this race, first of all, that's won an election in the last 10 years.
Social worker Paige Loud called out Republican candidate and former governor Paul LePage.
And he should go back and retire.
Maine's energy prices have skyrocketed in recent years, largely due to natural gas prices.
We need to address the natural gas shortage and the problem with the pipe.
Repeal the gas tax. I support stopping exportation of oil and LNG natural gas.
Diversifying the grid with renewables was popular.
I think the future is renewable energy at the household level, rooftop solar.
Maine is a great place for nuclear energy.
That wasn't unanimous.
Danger of nuclear power, I think, far outweighs the benefits of it.
The nuclear waste issue is probably the biggest problem.
We also pressed candidates for specifics on affordability, health care, gun control, the Iran war. The debate now posted online and our streaming app if you missed it. 3 of the 4 candidates support Medicare for all now, all but Baldacci, who told us he favors an incremental approach, like lowering eligibility age from 65 to 55 first. All 4 Democrats support the state's new 3-day waiting period for gun buying and the red flag law, empowering families to initiate confiscation. But only Wood said he's for a national assault weapons ban, like Golden said after the Lewiston mass shooting, like Congress passed 32 years ago. Well, Betsy, these are the Democrats. What are your takeaways from the hour-long debate?
Well, I think, it's really interesting to see them, now in this last final weeks to really try and differentiate themselves from one another and where they fall out. Clearly, Baldacci is the moderate in this race, and I think he was working hard to stake out that position. I don't know that helps you in a Democratic primary. And I think Matt, once again showed his long breadth of and variety of expertise in a lot of different roles that he's played, from Secretary of State to legislator to auditor, and I think he brought that experience. I think Paige was amazingly, she's smart and she's not afraid to say the thing, whatever it is. And it felt to me, and again, just watching it, I think Jordan Wood is right there. I felt like he was always playing catch up. And I think he is trying to stake out some territory to the left of everybody else. So interestingly, the way it was set up on the stage, you had, Baldacci on the right and Jordan Wood on the left. And I think Paige and Dunlap are really reflected, I think, where most of the 2nd District is. And as I said before, I think that the Democrat has a very good shot in this race, whoever wins. And I think the other thing we're going to see is that ranked choice voting is going to be really important, not just in this race, but all the races. And so I think people really need to think a lot about who their number 2s are.
Right, and we should say you do support Matt Dunlap.
Yeah.
And I want to say that the setup was alphabetical, like it'll be on the ballot.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Joe, who is Paul LePage fear the most, if any?
Oh, I don't think he fears any of them. It's kind of interesting to say that Baldacci was the most moderate when he's pretty far left. I mean, all these candidates are pretty far left. So in the 2nd District, I don't know how it plays. Jared Golden was not as far left as these candidates are, and he barely won every time. So I think it's good for LePage. To me, it came down to Baldacci and Dunlap. I don't think the other 2 have a shot at all. But I think that the Baldacci name is going to propel him to the top. I think there's a name there that's well known in the Bangor area, in the 2nd District area. I do think he's probably the front runner in this campaign. I like Matt Dunlap, but when they talked about nuclear power, they're talking about nuclear power from 40 years ago, not what it is today and the safeguards with nuclear power now. You know, and this whole idea that solar panels on everybody's house and all that thing, I don't know. I don't think that plays in the second district.
I know, but it works all over the rest of the world. I mean,
Well,
that's what the rest of the world has.
Yeah.
So
The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the Washington-based establishment, has is behind Baldacci. Did that give him any significant advantage? Maybe some financial resources?
I think it gives them some financial resources. I think they came in very late, which is really interesting. And given what the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee, whose candidate was Janet Mills, what just happened to them literally like 5 days before they announced it. When I heard it, I thought, I'm not sure this helps. If I was Joe Baldacci, I'd say, oh, please don't, because I think there's a lot of cynicism and anger about the Washington elite that's out of touch with the rest of the country, and certainly in Maine. Certainly their pick for Senate was out of touch with who we are, how angry we are, and how worried we are about things, and how much people want change. And so having the Democratic elite endorse the candidate with the most name recognition and sort of the legacy, he's the legacy candidate in this race, right? I'm not sure that that's helpful.
But what you're seeing nationally is the far left taking over the Democratic Party. And in Maine, we have Platner doing that. And you look around the country.
Well, they didn't support Platner.
Well, no.
So I think they're desperately trying to hang on to the middle.
I didn't say they supported him. I said the far left is taking over the party, is what I said. And there are candidates all over this country that are pretty extreme. And I'm not sure that they're going to be the best candidates out there.
Well, it's interesting, given the primaries that happened just this Tuesday, the same thing happened on the Republican side. The extreme candidates that were supported by Trump are the ones who beat the more moderate incumbents in a lot of cases. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out and who actually is more in touch with how angry people are and how concerned people are with what's happening.
It's the problem with the political system right now. We're at extremes in both parties.
Very good. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the Republican governor's race. In the Republican primary for governor, among the 7 Republicans on the ballot, a new Pan-Atlantic research poll this week found Bobby Charles ranked first or second by 43% of likely primary voters. Jonathan Bush was ranked top 2 by 36%. Garrett Mason, 32%. Undecided was next at 22%, followed by David Jones, Robert Wessels, Ben Midgley, and Owen McCarthy, all 10% or less. Former State Senate Majority Leader Mason this week embarked on a 3-day rural Maine revival tour through Oxford, Franklin, and Somerset counties. At the Big Rig Shop in Oxford, he told us about his goal to lower income taxes, like when he was in the legislature during the LePage administration.
When you look at small businesses like this, they're just hammered. You know, whether it be from paid family medical leave, rapidly increasing costs. We're talking about the fuel tax in here, both federally and the state, that's hurting companies like this. There's so many places that we can cut, and that because government has gotten so big. So, you know, that's what this tour is about, is hearing from people what are their pain points, how can we fix them, and how can we make government work better for you and not for the people, not for others that are taking advantage of the system.
Bush campaigned this week in Waldo County, visiting Matthew Brothers in Belfast, America's oldest window manufacturer, touting his economic agenda, featuring a 25% income tax cut.
Maine needs to fire a giant fireworks display nationally to say we're open for business again. You know, we are slipping and slipping and slipping. We're the 49 out of 50 state for economic growth, growing 0. So a tax cut, a shrinking of the bureaucracy, a simplifying of the rules and the regulations so that people can move and be creative in Maine will wake up our economy. And then places like this are probably going to be the first beachheads of growth.
Longtime Republican turned independent State Senator Rick Bennett this week submitted his ballot petition to get on the November gubernatorial ballot. Bennett's the first to do so. No primary for them. Independents face a June deadline to submit 4,000 signatures of registered voters, double the number of party candidates required to provide by March. Bennett said he had signature gatherers crisscrossing the state from Fort Kent to Freiburg and Kitteridge to Calais.
The people want a governor who's beholden only to them and who is focused relentlessly on getting things done for the people of Maine. They're really tired of, you know, the partisanship and the finger pointing, and they're really looking for problem solving.
Well, Joe, how do you take the Republican field at the moment and the sort of looming threat of Rick Bennett in the fall?
Well, right now, I don't believe the Pan-Atlantic poll at all.
Okay. Because you like Ben Midgley. And,
I do like Ben Midgley, but
he went from second in the Maine GOP convention to much lower.
This is the same people who predicted Sarah Gideon was going to beat Susan Collins by 10 points. Okay, Susan. So that was a 20-point reversal at the end. So the polls are not very good coming out of Pan-Atlantic. They never have been. I think the Republican primary is still very tight amongst 4 people. I think it's Charles, Mason, Bush, Midgley. McCarthy falls back a little bit, but I think that's who's coming through right now. If Charles is the Republican nominee and it's a Jackson or a Bellows as a Democratic nominee, Rick Bennett has a shot to be governor.
In other words, the more conservative MAGA and the more liberal Democrat, a wider path for the independent, whether it's Rick Bennett or someone else. Betsy, what's your take?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important in all these races, I think I said it before, is nobody's getting over 50%. So your number 2 vote is going to be really important. I think it's really interesting, and I do have a wide circle of friends who are both Republicans and Democrats.
Republicans?
No one.
You have friends who are Republicans?
I have lots of friends who are Republicans. And very few of them can name anyone who was in the Republican race for governor.
Well, we saw undecided was pretty high up.
I know, but that's what I mean. I think many, many people are like, oh, who? And so I think that's the biggest problem Republicans have. And, that gives, again, a legacy candidate like Jonathan Bush just because people know his name. But I think Bobby Charles is very problematic because not only is he to the far right, I think, of where Mainers are, he doesn't have any Maine history. So wherever you think Bellows and Troy Jackson are, or Hannah, or anybody else, they all have a track record in Maine. People know them. They're Maine people. I don't think that same thing is true for Bobby Charles. So I think that it's just an interesting thing. And I agree. I think what you said is right. That I think Rick Bennett had to get twice as many signatures as a regular party candidate to get on the ballot. I think it's telling that none of the other independents have even gotten there yet. And so I think, again, he has been very consistent in his message, and we'll see, I think, after June 9th, whether there's a path for him or not.
He has an organized campaign, obviously. I think the other candidates do not. Mm-hmm. They don't have the money behind them to do it. And remember, an independent just can get signatures from anybody.
Yeah.
Right,
so it should be much easier.
Voter.
Right, it should be
so
much
it's
easier.
Actually much easier than chasing Republicans around and trying to get, whatever it is, 2,000 signatures.
Why do Mason and Charles talk so much about crime in their ads when crime, according to Maine State Police, has been going down steadily for 5 years?
That's a good question.
Great question.
If I was running the campaign, that's not what I'd be focusing on. For me, my focus would be totally on economic issues in the state of Maine. We have one of the worst business climates in the whole country. We have one of the highest tax burdens in the whole country. That's what I would be focusing on. I don't get the issue of crime and immigration being up there, other than it plays to the red meat Republicans.
Immigration didn't. I'm sorry to interrupt. Immigration didn't even rank that high in the top 10 of issues.
Right. And I think it reflects what the president is talking about. When he was talking about immigration, everyone cared about immigration. When he's talking about something else, and crime is on his agenda. The sad part to me is, and again, I know Garrett, the best out of all those candidates, is that they know that that's just an emotional, as you said, it's the red meat, it's the thing. And we see that campaigns, and I would say more on the Republican side, but go to the fear-inducing things and the fear of immigration, the fear of crime, the fear of, when it's not the reality probably in the country, but certainly not in Maine. And so then people just feel like, oh gosh, they're out of touch. You're not even thinking about the things that I'm thinking about every day.
Joe, a quick last word?
But I mean, the Democrats all focus on Donald Trump. Their whole messaging is about Donald Trump.
Yeah, but that's real.
But he has nothing to do with the state of Maine and
Joe.
how poor of a shape we're in right
Joe,
now.
My gosh, come on.
It's due to the Democratic legislature and the governor that have totally ruined this state.
Save that thought. We're going to talk after this break about the Democratic governors and their messaging and their race. In the Democratic gubernatorial primary, that new Penn Atlantic research poll finds among likely Democratic voters, Nirav Shah ranked first or second by 39%, Angus King the third in the top two among 33%, Hannah Pingree 32%, Shenna Bellows 31%, Troy Jackson 18%, 16% undecided. That polling before Governor Janet Mills publicly endorsed Pingree, a former Maine House Speaker and her close aide of 7 years.
Hannah Pingree has what it takes to stand up to Donald Trump and win. I'm voting for Hannah Pingree for governor, and you should too.
Presumptive Democratic Senate nominee Graham Platner told Hancock County Democrats this week he ranked Jackson first on his ballot, saying they're aligned on labor and organizing issues. Platner also disclosed he ranked Bellows and Pingree on his ballot, we're told, in that order.
Those three candidates, all of them, whether it's on issues of democracy and standing up to Donald Trump, whether it's around the environment, whether it's around like broader progressive values, they are the ones that I think most represent my value set.
Secretary of State Bellows this week defended her policy of denying undercover license plates to federal immigration agents. As head of the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, she refused to give ICE and CBP agents those unmarked plates during their January arrest surge into the state. Now, the Trump Justice Department is threatening to sue Maine, calling the policy discriminatory and unconstitutional, and that it puts agent safety at risk. Bellows told me she remains defiant.
Trump's DOJ doesn't scare me. It's important to stand up for Mainers, including new Mainers, and it is really important that they not be arresting people in secret. We don't have secret police in a democracy. We're not giving ICE undercover license plates for civil immigration enforcement.
Bellows also won in court against Trump with Maine's chief federal judge dismissing a Justice Department lawsuit that demanded Maine's complete voter file for unclear reasons Bellows had argued were nefarious. Maine now one of 8 states where the Trump administration has lost this request. Betsy, you believe that standing up to Trump, like we're talking about now, is a legitimate part of the Democratic campaign?
Well, yeah, and especially on the heels of what Joe said, which is Trump has no impact on Maine. I would say that is blatantly not true. And I think that for Shenna, standing up to him and winning twice, I think, well, we don't know if she's won the license plate thing, but I think that that is a big part of the message because people are feeling the prices at the gas pump, the lack of or not bringing inflation down. Those are all things that Trump promised that are not been addressed, but they're even worse. So I think it does have a thing. And to say that, yes, we're going to stand up to this guy. And, Trump is under 34% approval rating because of the things he's trying. The slush fund of, almost $2 billion that he wants for January 6th insurgents. Building a ballroom for $1 billion, which he said he was going to fund, and now the taxpayers are going to be on the hook. These things, and not to mention the war in Iran, where we're spending $1 billion a day. So these things are increasingly unpopular across the country, but in Maine. And so, of course, the Democrats are saying, yes, we have to guard against that. In November, as soon as this primary is over, we're going to see Medicaid cuts, health care cuts that were passed in the awful bill, also known as the big, beautiful bill by them, and that are going to devastate our hospitals, our medical system, and the ability of people to have insurance, to get health care. So I think that is going to play heavily for people, and it should. It's very legit.
Joe?
Well, let's face it. Trump had no economic impact on Maine. Yes, our gas price is high right now. Absolutely, due to the Iran war. But under Joe Biden, they were the same thing. Under Joe Biden, we had 9% inflation, and no one cared back then. We spent $1.5 trillion on this Inflation Reduction Act that did nothing except put us more in the hole in Maine, and Maine taxpayers pay more in taxes and subsidize all kinds of green energy stuff that does nothing. Our electric bills are shooting through the roof because under Mills and Biden, we went to this green energy stuff that is just costing taxpayers more and more and more on their electric bill.
But Betsy, aside from being tough on Trump, how do you assess where the Democratic field is right now?
I think that it's very too close to call, I think. I agree with you that I think the Pan Atlantic poll isn't that accurate. I do think that Dr. Shaw has gotten a pass from most people scrutinizing his actual records and his actual policies, which is way more moderate than I think the Democratic Party is, for sure, and I think most Mainers. I think the Angus King poll, in the last poll that happened, shows when you tell people that he's not his father, his support goes from 35% to 4%. So again, whether people are going to know that by Election Day or not, we don't know. I think the real race is between the 3 candidates, Shenna, Hannah, and Troy. And you can see they're all, even with Shaw and Angus King in the mix, they're all within the margin of errors when you look at numbers 1 and 2. So again, I know I sound like a broken record, but that ranked choice is going to be so important.
Who do Republicans fear the most, if that's the right word? I know you don't think it is.
Fear? I don't think we fear any of them.
I think you should be shaking in your boots.
I mean, I would ask Dr. Shaw, how many vaccinations did you do during the COVID pandemic? And the answer is 0, because he's not a licensed doctor.
Right.
You know, he has an MD, but he can't practice.
He's never
medicine.
practiced. Right.
I mean, I know I've given a whole lot of vaccines, and a lot more than he's ever given. He's coming across as pretty different to me right now. He's going after Trump, and he's saying bad things about Republicans. If you are truly a moderate, you want to work with both parties. Nobody's coming across that way to me, except maybe Hannah slightly. But I'm not sure that a Janet Mills endorsement does much for you in this state anymore. When you look at the economic woes we have in this state, all due to Janet Mills and her policies, which Hannah was part of in the administration. So to me, I still think one of the most liberal candidates out of the Democrats is going to be selected. And I'm guessing Shanna Bellows has the shot.
They all seem to want the Platner glow, certainly the 3 that he ranked. And what do you think about the Mills endorsement? Maybe some people wanted to vote for her for Senate, and I think might be an outlet.
I think there's a chunk of people who were Janet Mills supporters, and I think that's clearly the strategic decision. I don't know if it was a smart strategic decision given the popularity of Platner and how angry people were at Janet Mills in that camp, many of them. So I don't know. Well, we'll see. I mean, I think it was an interesting choice, very close on the heels to her dropping out. So and I don't think it was a surprise to anyone. I mean, that the governor supported her person that she appointed to the cabinet.
Right.
But anyway, so I just, but it's all getting your name out there. They are all you're going to see lots of lots of attempts to get big news coverage, big events. They're doing creative things, and they're all on the road trying to meet people. And I think that that's going to make the big difference, because I think for all of them, when you meet them, it changes your opinion one way or the other. That's true of Graham. It's true of the Republican candidates and the Democrats. So I encourage people to get out there. There's going to be lots of opportunity in the next 3 weeks to talk to candidates.
I mean, I don't think Janet Mills ever had to fire to run in that Senate race anyway. But I do think when you meet all the candidates, Hannah Pingree is the friendliest one out of all of them.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, our U.S. Senate race, Platner versus Collins. This week's Pan-Atlantic Research poll on the expected U.S. Senate matchup found Platner at 48%, Collins at 41%, undecided 11%. That margin due to Platner winning independents and Collins having a net negative approval rating. Platner received the endorsement this week of Vote Vets and of Veterans for Responsible Leadership. A dozen military veterans, most of whom were deployed in combat with Platner in Iraq and Afghanistan, showed up from an endorsement town hall that I was at, those friends telling me Platner had been a reliable and effective Marine team leader. Platner expressing criticism of President Trump's 11-week-old war in Iran.
We live supposedly in a representative democracy. A historically unpopular war in our political system in no way, shape, or form can even figure out how to slow this thing up. And that's because our political system does not represent the average American.
For a third time, Senator Susan Collins this week voted to end the Iran war, the last time joined by 3 other Republicans, so the War Powers Resolution advanced. She explained her thinking to us in Millinocket.
I made very clear from the beginning that 60 days is a trigger point. And that's why you're seeing not only myself, but other members ask for more information and say that at this point, which happened on May 1st, that we reached the 60-day mark, that Congress should either authorize the military action in Iran or it should cease.
Joe, what about Collins taking out that position, defying President Trump?
I am not a big Trump guy. I love Susan Collins. I think she's a great senator. She's done a lot for the state of Maine. You look at that margin of error in that poll, and she's pretty much in the margin of error. And as I said earlier, that poll was off by 20 points during the Saranginian campaign. So while I think Platner has a lot of shine on him right now, there's still stuff coming out about him. The one about the the military guy who was, in a shootout in Iraq, and he's making fun of that guy. I think people are waking up to that and going, that is not right.
It's interesting what Joe just said, because at that military gathering, there was a lot of concern, and Platner himself said, I don't know how, but they're going to attack my military record.
Yeah, no, I think what we're seeing is an unprecedented attack, because he is coming closer than anyone else has in the last 6 elections against Collins. And I think his message is resonating. As we've said before, there are no candidates in the history of Maine that can show up somewhere and have 1,200 people show up, stand out in the rain, wait for you. And so he is hitting a nerve and aligning with where people are in terms of their frustration. I think they are going to try. I saw a fishing expedition online saying, is there anyone out there who served with Platner? Anybody want to talk? Anybody want to talk? And yeah, people want to talk. They want to talk to support him. And so I think one of the most interesting things about the Collins vote on the War Powers Act is how many Republicans joined her for the first time.
Right.
And I think we are seeing those cracks. The fact that they had to, for this vacation weekend, they had to adjourn a day early because they weren't going to give the money to ICE and they weren't going to give the money to the ballroom. Johnson in the House won't even bring up the War Powers Act resolution because he doesn't think he can win it and defeat what the Senate did. So I think we are finally starting to see some cracks, even among Republicans, to say, whoa, wait a minute. And I think that Graham Platner is there with an alternative message, an alternative way that he is picking up on. And I think that's what polls are picking up on. That's what Mainers are feeling. And I think that's what we're going to see. There's a lot of time between now and November. So, polls now are just an interesting snapshot in time. But I don't see anything. And all the stuff that they bring up about Graham and his record, those Reddit posts have been out there for months and months and months. If they were going to bother people, they would have already bothered them. So I think, they have, and they can't find anything else. So I think that's to Graham's point. And I think, as I've said many times, what media doesn't cover is the vision that Graham puts out about a different way, about people having health care so that frees up their economic engine. We're seeing that in, it's not covered, but that's what I think is
We've covered all of his plans.
I know.
People can find those stories on Houston. Joe, what about, Trump being minus 23 net approval, net favorable, unfavorable in this poll? I know you don't love the poll, but that's a bad number. Collins being minus 18 compared to Graham's net favorable plus 3. Well, why is hers so
There's
low?
a lot of angry voters out there, and I don't blame them. There's a lot to be mad at. A lot of things Platner's talking about were caused in Maine, not nationally. They are Maine problems, economic problems. People struggle paycheck to paycheck because of what Maine has done to them and raised taxes on them and spent money like crazy that we don't have, because we don't have the wealth in Maine that people think we do. And this whole idea that he's going after billionaires and millionaires and whoever other...
The oligarchy.
The oligarchy. He's taking money from them, though. He's taking money from people out in California, tech billionaires who are giving them all kinds of money. So their money's okay, but not on a national level. When you look at the 4 senators who voted against the war resolution, Collins, Murkowski, Tillis, and Cassidy now, 3 of them are not going back, right?
Right.
Rand Paul.
Exactly.
Rand Paul. I'm not sure about Tillis, but sure. I hear what you're saying. It's a safe vote for them to make.
It's a safe vote.
But think about, can we just think about that for 1 second? It's a safe vote, meaning they're doing what they think their constituents want finally, and what their heart and their conscience says finally, because they're not afraid of the wrath of Trump and what he did in these past primaries. So I just think we have to say a safe vote. It's not safe for the kids who are being sent over to Iran. It's not a safe vote for poor people who have no health care. It's not a safe vote for a president who says we can't afford to pay for Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. We have wars to win.
It's interesting, though, for this moment in time, it seems like Collins and Platner might be on the same side of the issue.
Yeah.
On the Iran war.
Yeah.
I think Americans are frustrated with it. We continue to delay. We keep saying we're going to go in and bomb them again, and then we're going to have a resolution. And we keep delaying it because we keep thinking there's going to be a resolution and a peace agreement. Yeah. I don't see it happening.
Well, we've had a ceasefire for roughly 4 weeks.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, when is this going to end? And that's what people are frustrated over.
All right. Betsy Sweet, Joe Bruno, thank you so much for being here, and thank all of you for watching. That's all for this edition of Political Brew. Have a good weekend.